Two little fish are swimming along when a big fish swims by and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" The two fish keep swimming on, and eventually one looks at the other and says, "What the heck is water?" The point of this story is that the most obvious, ubiquitous, and important truths are often the hardest to see and understand. The nonprofit sector is so ubiquitous and important, it is to Massachusetts as water is to fish. There are over 40,000 nonprofits in Massachusetts that account for at least 16% of jobs in the state. They represent $245 billion in annual income, and most importantly, they impact the lives of every single one of us. Given our scale and scope, the Boston Foundation has a unique stake in Greater Boston's nonprofit sector as a whole. Indeed, TBF's role from its inception has been to support the sector's development. We've been there at the beginning for a range of critical nonprofit organizations and institutions across all subsectors. And for over 20 years, we have supported some of the kind of technical assistance and capacity building work that we now think of as nonprofit effectiveness. But it wasn't until the mid-2000s that this type of work really began to take shape at TBF. It started in 2007 with the seeding of two backbone organizations to strengthen the sector's leadership and collective voice: the BU Institute for Nonprofit Management and Leadership and the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network. 2008 brought us a closer look at the overall health and composition of the sector with the publication of the Boston Foundation's Passion and Purpose Report. In 2009, during the Impact Project planning process, the Boston Foundation identified strengthening the sector as a major strategic area of priority. And that same year, we began offering multi-year general operating support grants. Finally, in 2011, a full-time position was created, and the Nonprofit Effectiveness Group formally came into being. Over the course of fiscal years 10 through 14, the Boston Foundation has made a significant investment in this work. The rest of this presentation will focus on how we are approaching the work and why its success is critical to achieving long-term social change in Greater Boston. If the nonprofit sector is as ubiquitous and important to Greater Boston as water is to fish, then we had better focus on making sure the quality of that water is as strong as possible. To that end, we introduce our three approaches to nonprofit effectiveness. Our first approach, capacity building, helps nonprofits do what they do better. We do this by strengthening organizational infrastructure via projects like strategic planning, board development, and financial management, supporting sector leadership development through educational programs, executive coaching, and workshops, and by connecting organizations and leaders to resources and opportunities. One way we're building organizational and leadership capacity is through the Capacity Building Fund, which supports consulting engagements for core grantees. Here's an example. Excel Education is a nonprofit that was founded in 2000 to provide education for low-income adults. When it started, there was just one volunteer instructor teaching a single adult GED class with 20 students. When TBF started funding Excel 5 years later, we recognized that there was a much greater need for adult education than Excel was able to address. While Excel's model was getting great results, the organization's long-term growth required building some new infrastructure and capacity. That's where the Capacity Building Fund came in. Through a consulting engagement scoped and funded by the Capacity Building Fund, we were able to enhance the impact of Excel's board of directors with strategic recruitment, board chair training, and improved board meeting effectiveness. Via executive coaching, we helped co-founder Don Sands transition from a skilled practitioner to a more visionary, public-facing leader. And with the help of the consultant, Excel was able to develop a strategic expansion plan and set ambitious fundraising goals. This capacity building fund investment supported access to outside expertise to address much needed areas of growth that Excel otherwise wouldn't have been able to access or afford as such a small organization. It also supported the development and implementation of a new growth plan and significant increases in board and individual donor fundraising. Excel is now serving more than 350 students annually and is poised for continued growth. While we believe that strong, high-performing organizations and leaders are critical, we also know that they aren't enough. The type of change we seek for our communities is broad and complex, and achieving it will require coordinated, collective action. That's why our second approach to effectiveness is focused on collaboration. We foster cross-sector collaboration by giving communities and organizations both the incentive and support to work together to solve problems. We support deep, strategic collaborations and mergers that help nonprofits preserve and expand services for their constituents. And we build the sector's capacity for collective advocacy and action. One way we're supporting collaboration is through Collaborate Boston, a prize competition launched in 2013 and based on the dual principles that it will take all of us working together to realize the change we want to see in the world, and that some of the best ideas for improving our communities come from the communities themselves. It's an open annual competition for community-led, cross-sector collaborative ideas that help push towards TBF's overarching vision of thriving people and vibrant places in Boston. The inaugural 2013 competition was focused on improving the lives and outcomes of Black and brown boys and young men in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan. One of the two winners focused on a widely acknowledged challenge, that the students identified by the Boston Public School Achievement Gap Office have a higher risk of dropping out of school than the rest of Boston's students. Their proposed solution was to give students a reason to stick around: robotics teams. A unique collaboration between the Latino STEM Alliance, the Center for STEM Education at Northeastern University, and the Boston Public Schools Achievement Gap Office, partners who had not formally worked together before, created and supported robotics teams at 8 different Boston public schools. The teams gave these students a new avenue for focused learning, most of them meeting once a week for an hour and a half after school to learn the basics of robotics, how to build robots, and programming skills, all leading up to a tournament-style robotics competition. The program was a huge success, and the partners are continuing this project into the current school year. The 2014-2015 competition is focused on strengthening neighborhoods along the Fairmont line. 4 $25,000 prizes were awarded in November 2014 to some outstanding collaborations, and you can learn more about these winners and the finalists at collaborateboston.org. Our third approach is focused on transparency, leveraging the Giving Common, TBF's open online database with over 950 nonprofit profiles. Via the Giving Common, we provide open access to in-depth information on nonprofit organizations, enable donors to practice data-driven philanthropy, and help nonprofits use data to tell their stories. Here's an example of the Giving Commons impact. My Life, My Choice is an organization engaged in the critical work of preventing the sexual exploitation of adolescent girls. This is obviously important work, yet the organization found itself chronically underfunded. One reason is that My Life, My Choice is a division of a much larger organization, and while it has its own mission, staff, board, and financials, this structure makes their record keeping and reporting difficult to separate from that of their parent organization, even though My Life, My Choice is comparatively just a drop in the bucket. To effectively fundraise, they needed to be able to tell their own financial and organizational story, and donors needed accurate information from a trusted source. In the fall of 2012, the Giving Common team worked closely with My Life, My Choice to do just that. Potential donors now have access to information on its mission, programs, management, governance structure, and financials. The Giving Common effectively took My Life, My Choice out from under the shadow of its parent organization. And the results are starting to show. She Gives, a local philanthropic learning and giving foundation, recently used the Giving Common to conduct its signature in-depth due diligence research on My Life, My Choice, which resulted in She Gives members donating $40,000 to the organization. Given the rigor of the She Gives vetting process, this likely would not have been possible without the Giving Common. My Life, My Choice isn't alone. There are over 950 profiles on the Giving Common, representing almost half of the available market. The Giving Common is quickly becoming the authoritative resource on nonprofits in Massachusetts. The stories of Excel, Collaborate Boston, and My Life, My Choice represent just a few of the ways in which we are building capacity, fostering collaboration, and making the sector transparent. Here is a brief overview of the rest of our work. The Vision Fund provides small grants for organizations that don't fall within the Boston Foundation's 5 core program areas. The BU Institute for Nonprofit Management and Leadership educates and connects Greater Boston's next generation of nonprofit leaders with an emphasis on leaders of color. Out of the Blue grants are unsolicited, unrestricted, one-year grants that recognize outstanding leadership. The Catalyst Fund supports strategic collaborations and mergers. The Massachusetts Nonprofit Network promotes, educates, engages, and builds the capacity of the Massachusetts nonprofit sector. We also produce popular workshops and newsletters. Ultimately, this work supports our vision for the nonprofit sector as a critical and efficient lever for social change. We see a future in which nonprofits and leaders are stronger and more effective than ever. Organizations and leaders are connected and working collaboratively for greater impact. And donors make informed, data-driven decisions, resulting in effective organizations receiving the funding that they need and deserve. We believe that we are heading in the right direction, and that is why our overarching recommendation to the board when this presentation was given in September 2014 was to stay the course. Let's continue to fund and support a stronger nonprofit ecosystem for a stronger Greater Boston by identifying and building on what works and by making adjustments where needed. Let's continue to support and facilitate the use of data to tell the stories of all the critically important work being done on the ground, while dedicating increased attention to building our capacity and that of our partners to measure outcomes. This work is critical. Let's raise its profile among other funders, nonprofits, and anyone who has a stake in the success of nonprofits. Together, we can rally support for a more effective nonprofit sector and a stronger Boston. Thank you.